back with
your host Henry Brito on Henry's Podcast and Talk, and today we're going to be talking. And I have my good friends Tim
yeah.
and what was your name?
Geraldo.
And one of my great and good and his friend Geraldo.
What's
Yeah.
up?
Appreciate it.
Glad to have you guys back on either way.
Yeah,
And
thank you for
yeah.
having us.
yeah, last time we talked about Tekken 6 and about the series, and now we're moving on to the next game. The first game the very first Tekken game, and the only one on the PS4, Tekken 7.
That was the first thing I noticed.
Yeah,
with the game.
because it is the only game that was released out on PS4, and I gotta say, this is easily the biggest and the number one best-selling Tekken game of all time. Like, probably clocking about like probably 60 million copies, and a lot of people, really like this game a lot. It really helped with the competitive tournaments, and esports was really good with it. And I really do think that what they were doing with this game, I feel like this was like a really good step in the right direction with gameplay. I like it. It's a lot of fun, honestly. I think esports, a lot of people love it. We got some of the most popular Tekken players, Nee and his usual about of how he plays with Tekken, and we got a chance to see a lot more stuff with the characters and a lot more with the gameplay. I think this is probably Tekken at its best, really, if you ask me, because
Oh, wow.
I like how it plays. Like, it's more of a defensive play, but I will admit, out of all the Tekken games, when it came to quality, I feel like this one was like the least one visually to look at sometimes. After the release of Tekken 6 and its sales, a lot of people really didn't like the game, like I said back, and so it caused them to have a lower, less budget with making the game, so the game doesn't look as visually appealing on the PS4 console, like like Batman Arkham Knight or something that looked really visually good.
Yeah.
So Tekken 7 was kind of like a game that wasn't really visually appealing sometimes, and it felt a little, downgraded when it came to the other games, because I feel like Bandai and took took the systems like the PS2 and the PS1 to their full capabilities. But I feel like with Tekken 7, I feel like they kind of didn't take their full capabilities with those games. I feel like they kind of messed up sometimes with it. And I feel like Tekken 7 is fine, I guess. I mean, it got an arcade version first, and then it got like a few other ones. And they even introduced like a new guest character. It was Akuma from Street Fighter.
Cool.
Akuma was Capcom collabed with Bandai to help them make Akuma into the game, and honestly he plays just like how he was in Street Fighter. The Shoryukens, the spinning kicks, the Tatsumaki kicks and stuff, and also the raging demon attack that he does too is pretty cool. I actually like playing as him when I first played this with my friend. It's the game Tekken 7 is the game that got me into the Tekken franchise as a whole. My friend made me play with him on the PS4, and we ended up playing this game a lot. And I really do think that this game is honestly a really good game. It means a whole lot to me when it comes to it, because I feel like this was like the game that really made me like fighting games that were three-dimensional. And I really do like it. I do like some of these 3D fighting games where it's like this. I think Tekken 7 holds a special place in my heart as a game that, is one of my favorites on the PS4 to play.
Yeah, that's interesting that PS3 only had Tekken 6, and now PS4 only has Tekken 7. And I guess we're not at Tekken 8, but it's just kind of interesting that these later consoles only get one game
Yeah,
per,
afterwards.
versus like PS2 there was a couple games on it, and
Yeah, the
and
PS2 had
PS1
like
there was a couple games.
yeah, there was like a couple Tekken mainline games in there. But either way, like I mean, the story is pretty much a lot more different with it. So
Yeah, tell us what happened at the end of Tekken 6.
So at the end of Tekken 6, Jin ends up being taken away by the U.S. government because like they found his body in the desert, and probably they were just gonna take him. Meanwhile, Heihachi ends up going back to the Mishima Zaibatsu to try and reclaim it again, since Jin isn't there anymore. And so he eventually does reclaim the Mishima Zaibatsu and tries to finish off the war that he has that Jin made with Kazuya, like with G Corp. So eventually Kazuya ends up basically having to deal with with Heihachi, and he has a hard time trying his best to be able to deal with this. And either way, while Jin isn't really like the main focus of the story, because the box art shows a picture of Kazuya and Heihachi finally settling the rivalries once and for all. And Jin. Well, for Jin, mostly like the only thing that we see him is that like he gets away from the UN because he ends up using the devil gene in his body. It ends up taking over him and is trying to protect him from the government. And so he ends up stopping. He ends up trying his best to get away from them and stops nearby a village, and tries to be taken away, but by the Zaibatsu. But apparently Lars comes in and tells them that no, this guy's coming with me. I need him. And so he eventually takes Jin away, and they go over to this other guy by the name of Lee, who, okay, so long story short, for Alyssa, she basically had to get rebuilt because she turned against Lars in Tekken 6 because she was a robot specifically to help and assist Jin in his mission. So Jin ends up putting her on the line and ends up using her to fight Lars, which she eventually had to defeat and destroy. And so she had to be reprogrammed again by this guy named Lee, who is another part of the Mishima family. And eventually, Lee ends up helping her rebuild Alyssa by getting her memories back and everything, and then gets attacked while Jin is still recovering from his, I guess, coma or so. And eventually they start dealing with this, and then they end up taking him to another place so he can be able to recover. While under that, we meet Akuma into the series. Akuma gets put into the story when Heihachi's at his dojo, and eventually fights, and Akuma fights Heihachi because Kazumi, Heihachi's wife, basically said that she wanted him to kill Heihachi and Kazuya as well. If things got, and I was thinking, wow, you want him to kill your son too? Probably because things might get a little bit chaotic with them, and they did eventually. And Heihachi does fight with Akuma, but Akuma ends up hitting him with a raging demon, which, if people don't know about from Street Fighter, it's a move that attacks your soul by hitting you with the sins of your past that you did in your life. So like the sins, lives. Yeah, like it's a merciless attack that hurts, but Heihachi was able to survive it, but eventually Akuma does go after Kazuya, which Kazuya had to be forced to turn into his devil gene, and then Heihachi was able to live broadcast it and all, and was able to make everybody in the public just not like Kazuya because, they found out the truth that, wait, we were helping a guy that turned into the devil as well. So they ended up turning against Kazuya, and Heihachi ends up using one of the satellites that he put on space to take down G Corp in a single shot. And Kazuya ends up surviving that, and then eventually destroys the satellite and tells Heihachi to fight him back in the volcano where he dumped him in. And those two have the final
full circle.
Yes.
Yep, it's full circle. They finally settled the rivalries completely. Kazuya and Heihachi trade blows until Kazuya is being forced to turn into his 100% devil form. Heihachi puts the best effort that he has into defeating, Heihachi, into Kazuya. Kazuya ends up getting knocked out by Heihachi out of his true devil form, and Heihachi proves to be a much more stronger foe. But eventually, like, when Kazuya tries to fight and sees Heihachi, he gets PTSD from his previous life, like seeing like a younger version of Heihachi, and is scared to fight. But with all of his effort, he puts the last bit of energy into his punch, and then punches Heihachi near his heart and stopping his heartbeat, and eventually just kills him, and then throws him into a volcano.
Classic.
Yeah, and he ends up just saying this one line, saying that a fight is just only about one person is alive, and that's it. That's all it matters. And then pretty much the story ends off with Jin recovering from his coma, and Lars saying that you're the reason why this whole war started, so you gotta fix it. And so Jin sets off by saying it's up to me to kill Kazuya, and that sets off the ending part of Tekken 7 and moving on to 8.
Dang.
Yep.
So we can assume at the end of Tekken 7 that Heihachi is dead. His heart stopped, and he was thrown in a volcano.
Yeah, Kazuya punched him
again.
Yep, and so eventually the events of Tekken 8, that's where we get to see full circle now, because Jin's gonna have to stop his father once and for all.
Yeah, let's see what happens. Wow, that's crazy.
Mm-hmm.
So who's your favorite character to play with? And
I would say it's Jin now.
Still, okay.
Devil Jin, I kind of put him as a second place part, but I really do like playing as normal Jin sometimes, honestly. I really like playing with him. They really did do a good job with him in the game, and I think he's pretty good to play as either way. He's probably one of my favorite characters to go with.
Which one sucks?
I would say I don't really like playing with Alyssa. I feel like Alyssa's just not for me specifically. I feel like she's a much more floatier type character with how she moves and how she plays. She's not really my favorite type when it comes to that.
Yeah.
I feel like one of my favorite characters would easily want to go for Mishima. Like, if I play with a Mishima character like Kazuya or Heihachi, I would pretty much know what they're doing because most of their movesets are pretty much the same.
Gotcha. Do you, now they're on 4, you always use the pads. You never use a joystick when you're playing this game.
Yep.
But 3 has joystick,
Joysticks,
right?
Yeah, the PS3 has joysticks. Same thing with the PS2, and the PS4 does. You can use the joysticks, but I personally don't use the joysticks unless if it's just doing a quarter circle, like if it's doing a quarter circle move that I have to do by moving the L stick in a quarter circle. Yeah.
Got you. It's easier than doing the pad.
Mm-hmm.
Now, nerd question also, bumpers. When do bumpers come into play?
Well, they're basically there to help you do more combos. Like, if you don't want to press the first and second buttons together normally, with your hand being positioned differently, you could just have one of them being mapped. You could have the special buttons be mapped onto those bumpers to make it much more easier.
Oh, okay, that's cool.
Smart.
Yeah.
That's what the pros are doing.
Yeah,
The online
exactly
play.
right. Yeah, right.
Did they expand upon the online play with this game or no?
Yeah, they did
I'm
eventually.
sure they
But I
did,
mean, the
yeah.
online servers weren't always the best at sometimes, but they did. But it's still working, and it's still pretty good for what I hear. And it's pretty awesome. I like it. It's not a bad. I didn't have a bad time playing this game. Honestly, it was a lot of fun.
We're not getting to 8 yet, but is 8? Did it come out on PS4 or is it just on 5?
It came out. It's only on the newer gen consoles, so like PS5, Xbox Series S and X, and
Okay.
it's also on PC for PC players if they want to enjoy it for what it is.
Has there been PC versions before this?
Well,
no?
Tekken, no, actually not. Well, I would say that Tekken Tag Tournament 2 was kind of there, but I will go about those games like another time. I just personally, Tekken 7 was like was like one of the mainline games to be on PC, and then Tekken 8 eventually joined it and became another game for the PC players.
Okay. What's your rating?
I'd say, I'd definitely give it a 10 out of 10.
Oh,
I
wow.
absolutely think that Tekken 7 did an amazing job with the moveset. Everyone loves the whole defensive way of playing this game, and I think it's like a balanced way. You get rewarded for playing defensively and also rewarded for playing offensively sometimes. And I feel like that the character roster was very balanced. Yeah, sure, some of the DLC characters were broken when they came out first, but they were able to make these characters a lot more balanced afterwards.
Yeah.
I mean, I do think they're pretty fun to play.
Is it only Tekken 4 and Tekken 7 get a 10 out of 10? Or
I mean, I gave
think
Tekken.
4
I
or
gave
no,
Tekken
3.
3.
Yeah, Tekken 3. I gave it a 10 out of 10.
Got you. Okay.
No, Tekken 7, yeah.
And then 4 and 6 were bunk. Well, they're not good ones. 4 and 6, Tekken 4 and 6 were not good.
I mean, well, for the public's opinion, yeah, but nowadays Tekken players are just thinking that they were kind of wrong about what they said about those games.
Got you.
So nowadays, I don't really think the Tekken series had many bad games to begin with. I feel like Tekken 4 and Tekken 6 were like pretty different games from the most part, but I feel like those games did a good job for what they were trying to do.
Got you.
And what about the soundtrack for Tekken 7? How is it?
Okay, so when it comes to the soundtrack of Tekken 7, I don't really hear it that much, but I could try. But they did add a jukebox setting to the game, so you can be able to play the music from other different types of games.
Cool.
That's cool.
One music I would definitely say would be the one song I listen to mostly is from a different game, but I really do like the song. It's called Abyss of Time from one of the other games.
Cool.
Abyss of Time, yeah, that's the song's name.
Sweet.
Should we listen?
Yeah, let's take a quick listen. Yeah.
I do really like the sound effects off the bells with that song. I mean, even though it's from a different Tekken game, I feel like I would want to count it on this one because, you know, Tekken 7 was the first game that introduced the jukebox mechanic.
So you could listen
Yeah.
to all the music from the previous games,
Mm-hmm.
which is pretty. Yeah,
That's cool.
That feels like a very 21st century kind of thing. PS4.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, oh, this system can handle this now.
Yes.
Um,
Bring the nostalgia back.
yeah, but were you saying the graphics weren't good on Tekken 7?
I would say that Tekken 7, a lot of people would say that, yeah, out of all the games, I mean, Tekken 7 doesn't look that bad on the PS4 or when you're playing on the PS5 with backwards compatibility. But I would personally say that when it came to how it was, a lot of people weren't really happy with Tekken 7, not Tekken 7, well, Tekken 6 and Tekken Tag 2. But I will talk about those games another time. But a lot of people weren't happy with those two games, and eventually they had to downgrade the quality of the game and had to go for smaller budget. That's why we got That's why Tekken 7 looks how it is now, because it's not as visually appealing as it should
striking.
be.
Yeah.
That's why. That's what I personally feel like when people say that, oh, Tekken 7 isn't that visually appealing, and honestly, I can understand them. Like, it's not as visually good as how Tekken 6 and Tag 2 were, because those games took the PS3's potential and put it up to the best efforts. I feel like those games were really beautifully looking on the PS3. But when it comes to Tekken 7 on the PS4, it just is, it's not as good looking as people wanted it to be. That's why.
Yeah, it didn't meet the expectations. But you still gave it a 10 out of 10 because the gameplay is awesome, the story's awesome, right? Is those the reasons?
Yep, I personally feel like that's really amazing for what it does.
Yeah.
Right on.
Mm-hmm.
Nice. Shall we wrap?
Yep, that was I say that Tekken 7 is one of the greatest follow-ups to the series, and I feel like that it's easily one of the best games that people have been talking about. It's really competitive to this day.
Right on.
Mm-hmm.
Nice.
Well, that concludes for today's episode of Tekken 7. I'll see you guys in the next one.
Bye, everybody.
Later.